Hey, what's up? Welcome back to the Westworld Companion Podcast presented by The Disorderly. Head over to thedisorderly.com for the best in sports and entertainment. You can find us on Twitter at Disorderly Media, Facebook, Disorderly ENT, and my name is Nick Risner. You can find me on Twitter at Nick Risner, NickRizner. DMs are open. Please feel free to reach out. Hit me up there. So we just watched Season 2, Episode 9, Vanishing Point. And right off the bat, I'll just say I loved it. I thought it was a great episode. There's lots of context and big reveals and things like that we've honestly been waiting on. They've been teasing a lot of these things. There's also a lot of mysteries and sort of cliffhangers heading into the finale. Obviously, Episode 9, the penultimate episode. Episode 10 is the season finale. It's next Sunday. So there's a lot of mystery still, a lot of reveals. I feel like I have a clearer picture of what's going on right now. So I'll just say this. I'll start with, I guess, the big reveal of the episode, the Forge. The Forge is, I guess, another name for the Valley Beyond, and basically they explain what that is. So the whole season, obviously, all these guys are sort of marching towards, and by that I mean, William, all the host, everybody, every single person in the show is kind of all marching towards the same convergent point, and what that is the Valley Beyond. The Confederados are calling it Glory. Everyone had different names for it. Now the name that we get now, which seems like the official name, is the Forge, which is basically a giant version of the Cradle, with all the guest backups. So the Cradle, of course, is this huge supercomputer database type room or whatever section of the Mesa where all the host backup data is stored. So if Dolores gets blown into a million pieces, you can just download a new Dolores into a new Dolores body and kind of have her exist again, right? So that's what the Cradle is. The Forge is the same thing, except instead of storing host data, that's where they're storing the guest data. So apparently every single guest that's ever been in the park, they're recording all their experiences. They're creating these profiles, this perfect backup to who these people are, how their brains work, whatever. And they have the profile version of the park guest stored in this giant database called the Forge. So that's what it is. It's basically, I guess, Delos' secret project the whole time. That was kind of William's secret project the whole time. And there's multiple goals. A lot of people are saying, listen, if we have these perfect human copies, then we can use it for marketing and have the ultimate marketing campaign, like what they do now, where they see what your, what websites you go to, and they kind of do targeting advertising to you on Facebook and whatever. That's one concept. It seems like William's ultimate plan was to create these immortal, half robot, half human beings. We saw that with James Delos. We also saw that with Bernard. I don't know if that's really, I think it's still off the books. I think the only person that knows Bernard, or at the time knew that Bernard was a half human, half robot based on Arnold. I think the only people that actually knew that was just Ford, as far as I know. So we did see that with Bernard as well, I guess. But for the most part, we saw James Delos, and it wasn't really working out, but it seems like that is William's side project. So this is what the Forge is. It's basically, that's what it's for. Now, it's interesting because there's a flashback. We learn a lot about William's wife's suicide and things like that. And there's a flashback scene where there's dinner party, and William and Ford have a conversation. And I don't really know the major implications of this. This is why I even wrote it down. So the agreement they made for the most part was that Ford would stay out of the Forge and let William do whatever he wants to do with his side project, and William in return would stay out of Ford's narratives and let him do whatever he wanted to do with the actual park. Now, it seems like, because he said, hey, we had an agreement, you broke it, and Ford's like, no, you broke it, which obviously implies that Ford's project stayed out of the narratives, and I don't know what that means. I don't know how he broke it. They didn't really, I don't know. Now, there's obviously a lot of questions about Ford being a robot, too, so I feel like maybe, not Ford, William. So I feel like maybe that ties in somehow. I'm honestly not really sure. That's interesting in itself. But the quote he says to him is, when's the last time you looked at your creation, at what it's been learning about its subjects? Be careful. For a self-portrait, you may find it's not very flattering. Now, that's immediately precedes him sliding the profile over, which is basically William's profile. So it's like, I assume the creation he's referring to is the Forge. So he's like, when's the last time you really looked at what you're creating with the Forge, and what you've been learning about its subject? Now, the subject in this case is William. It's been tracking William's behavior and learning all about William. And he slides on the card, and obviously we find out that card has some pretty horrific things on it. Just his experiences in the park, him driving Dolores into a shed and raping her, him just killing kids, him doing all this crazy, crazy stuff. And he refers back to this a lot, but William obviously has this darkness inside of him. So all of this stuff is recorded on his profile, and he's basically saying like, be careful, man, because be careful what you wish for, because a self-portrait of yourself, it's like if you're an egomaniac and you're like, I want this guy to paint a picture of me, and then you look at the picture and you're like this ugly, horrific looking human being. It's like, see, your own ego basically drove you to having this self-realization that you're an ugly piece of shit. This is more of a personality version of that, but same thing. You know what I mean? So I don't know, pretty heavy, dark thought there, but one worth revisiting in a show like this, I believe. Again, we still don't know if William's daughter's a host, and I want to focus on this as well. So it seems like it's just interesting because it seems like she got killed, right? That one scene, which is a wild scene, by the way, where he kind of snaps and he's positive that she's a host, so he just kills his own daughter. And then he has this realization at the end when she's holding that microchip that, holy shit, how does she have this microchip? She must be my actual daughter because I left it at the house, right? So like that's like they're almost pushing you to the direction that she is a human, right? But I don't know if I agree with that because let's put it this way. They're keeping it intentionally vague. Back to the Raj World episode 3 or whatever it was, there's that whole, foreplay type deal where like him, the daughter and this other guy are like, how do I know you're human? Well, humans can't get shot with guns, so shoot me and we'll figure it out. And she goes to shoot him and it leaves a little welt, but, doesn't kill him, so obviously he's a human. And he not purposely, but I mean the show purposely leaves the part out where he's shooting her. So I get that, right? Because they wanted to keep this mystery going this entire time. But even in this scene where the reveal, the quote-unquote reveal that she's a human because he kills her, they still intentionally leave things very vague. Like the guy comes and scans William's neck to see if he's a host, and it comes back that he's not. Now, by the way, that doesn't prove that he's not a host either, because as we've seen, Arnold passes these tests. Arnold can pass the DNA test with a thumbprint, all this stuff, right? So if he's one of those host-human hybrids, it seems like he would be able to pass the old neck test, right? But with William's daughter, the guy scans her neck, and then you don't see the screen for her, so it never actually says whether she's human or not. You don't get to see the guy's little remote control, and then he kills all of them, and he goes over to see if she's got that little insert in her forearm, and he goes to cut her arm open, and that's when he sees the microchip. So he pulls the knife away, and we never actually see him. So he sees the microchip, and he assumes like, oh, holy shit, she's got a microchip. So obviously that means that she's my actual daughter. But two things: one, we don't know what's on the microchip, and two, right when he was about to definitively prove that she was a host and cut her arm open, he realizes that he sees the microchip and decides, oh, never mind, I'm not even going to try to definitively prove this or not. So that's very interesting that they left both those things vague, because I get maybe the scam thing, so they're trying to keep the mystery alive right up to the point where he shot her, and that would kind of give it away. But on the other hand, the surefire way of cutting her arm open, she was already dead, right? So it's like, if you're going to cut her arm open, why stop? Why not just prove it to yourself? I mean, it might be fairly horrific to cut into your own daughter's arm once you realize she's real, but it seems weird to be like, here's the definitive proof. Nah, we're not going to do it. You know what I mean? That seems a very intentional writing choice. And what's the point of keeping the mystery alive after the, supposed reveal that she's a human? That's interesting to me. And of course, the other big cliffhanger is whether William is a host. The episode ends, or it might have been some scenes after this. The Dolores Teddy stuff might have been after, but the last time we see William in this episode is him cutting into his own arm. He's about to kill himself, and then he cuts into his own arm right as you hear his wife's, voice kind of echoing, "Is this real? Are you real?" So it's very obvious he's trying to look to see if he has the insert in his arm. It seems to me that he doesn't know. He's just questioning, holy shit, am I a host? Because he's seen, he ran this project, so he's seen James Delos and all these people not realize they're a host. So he's going to see if he's a host. Now, it's interesting because the other people seem to break down when they realize they're hosts. So is William going to break down now? If William is, in fact, a host, he cuts his own arm open, and he sees the little plug insert thing that we saw Bernard use, which, by the way, very clever to show Bernard use that to kind of remind us that that's there, because otherwise I think people wouldn't have picked up on the symbolism of cutting your arm open. So he's checking to see if he's a host right now. If he finds out he is a host, is he going to start to break down and malfunction like James Delos did? I don't know. It's possible, right? It's worth mentioning Will's wife as well, because obviously a lot of the episode was dedicated to her. We find out some things about her. We find out that she had a problem with alcohol. We find out the reason she killed herself was after learning who William really was. So William gives this big monologue speech as I think he presumes that she's asleep or passed out in the bed. She's not. She's awake. She's listening the whole time with her eyes closed. So he's sitting there saying this whole thing about, basically he never really loved her because he never really belonged to this world. He belonged to Westworld. He was really only his true self when he was in Westworld. That's what he realized, which even that dates back to the conversation between young William and Dolores, where he's saying, all you are, Dolores, you're a mirror, and everyone loves looking at themselves, basically. So he obviously found his true self in Westworld. Seems like that's the only place he was ever his true self. Seems like that's where his heart is. That's where his soul is in Westworld. And he never really loved his wife. And he says this, and then goes over and puts the little profile thing inside a book, like tucks it away for some reason. The wife wakes up, walks over, obviously very sad about what she just heard, finds the profile thing, and then watches it. She watches basically a summary of who William is as a person with all these video clips of what he's doing in Westworld. And, he's a real piece of shit. So I guess that drives her to kill herself. She takes that little chip, puts it in a box where only her daughter could find it. Well, that's not true. I guess anyone could find it, but it's her daughter, a music box that was meant for her daughter or whatever. Which is interesting, too, because it said they threw it away, that music box. Ooh, that's actually really interesting. Now I'm thinking about this. She tells this whole story about how she threw the music box away. But obviously she didn't, because that's where the thing was. Right? So I almost wonder if that's... Say somebody created a perfect version... a near perfect version of William's daughter. Is it possible then that they would get details wrong? Because William thought that they got the detail wrong about having the chip. It's like, no, I didn't tell anyone about that chip. Then she had it in her hand. So William's like, oh, shit. I was so confident that I killed my own daughter because I thought that I spotted the flaw in the robot version of her. Like, that can't be my real daughter because of this. Now I'm thinking, could that have been what they were showing with the thing, where the daughter had some story about throwing the music box away, the little dancer ballerina person. She had a story about throwing that away, but in reality, her mother kept it. So if that was the case, even if her daughter spent all this time thinking that she threw it away and it was gone forever, isn't it possible that, like, if she found the microchip in that box, then wouldn't she have known? I feel like she would have told the same story and said, well, then I found out Mom kept it all these years, or something like that. She never said that. So I almost wonder if that was an intentional flaw. Unless I just missed it in the episode, but that's interesting in itself, because Ford knew that he gave William the little chip of himself, right? Ford obviously gave it to him. He probably assumed that's why the wife killed herself. He probably assumed that, the daughter, upon discovering this little microchip, would go after her father, because she would either blame the dad for killing herself or whatever, right? So I can kind of understand that too. So it seems like if he created a host version of her, you can just give her the microchip and it would fit. But there'd still be some details off because he obviously wasn't there for every single detail. So he'd have to guess at some stuff. One of those things could be the dance box. That's interesting. I don't know. I'm intrigued by that. But we'll watch. Obviously, we got one more episode to go, so we'll find out the answers to this question soon. I'm sure. All these questions: who's a host, who's not. Some more news and notes from the episode, just to do some maintenance or whatever. Clementine is now Charlotte's weapon. She basically gave Clementine a piece of Maeve's power that allows her to use the mesh network to communicate. Although Charlotte obviously is her versus the robots right now, so what Charlotte Hale is doing is using that power to tell all the different hosts to kill themselves. So whenever she's in proximity of hosts, they start killing each other and killing themselves, and that's basically how she's gonna, deal with this whole problem of this host uprising. Is have her new toy Clementine walking around and basically making everyone just destroy themselves. So it's not even Delos versus the robots anymore; it's the robots versus each other. So that's interesting. Definitely gives a leg up to Charlotte Hale. But on the other side of things, we have Maeve now, who got altered by Ford. So Ford's in Bernard's head or whatever. Bernard walks over to where Maeve is, and then Ford's like, oh, don't worry, she's going to search your mind for a message from me. And we watch this message play out in real time, where she's actually seeing Ford in the room or whatever, but it's supposed to be symbolic of her searching Bernard's mind. So when she's doing that, basically Ford gives this whole speech about how that was how Maeve was always his favorite and the closest he ever had to a daughter, and they're going to come in here and try to destroy you, but don't let them. And then he kisses her on the forehead, and then you see her programming getting altered, right? Now we can read into whatever this is, but I just pause it to make sure. On the actual tablet, what happens is it says unlocking core permissions. So it seems to me like she's just going to have even more control over herself, more control over changing her programming and altering whatever she wants in there. It seems like unlocking core permissions means that Maeve is now completely off the chain, completely free. Who knows what that means as far as the limits of her mesh network powers and all this stuff. Like, she could be like just like a I think she's a super robot, basically. So it's her super robot versus this new weapon that Charlotte has, which is being able to use Maeve's powers basically against her by having that mesh network abilities that they control, so they can control the robots the same way Maeve can. So that's setting up for a pretty big battle heading into the season finale. And finally, rest in peace, Teddy. Teddy finally killed himself. It was weird. Like the Ghost Nation warrior, she's like, make sure none of them are alive. And then one guy's running away, and Teddy points the gun at him, decides not to kill him for whatever reason. I think he's starting to realize that Dolores' plan isn't the best one. That's his opinion, but that's what he's saying. It's like, I know what you're going to do. I know how this game ends. I can't be a part of it anymore. And unfortunately, I'm programmed where I can't hurt you. I'm programmed to protect you at all costs, right? So he can't kill Dolores. I think he almost like implied that he would, but he can't, because that's part of his core cornerstone. Even if you change him, you can't change his cornerstone, which is to protect Dolores. So the only way he can stop himself from being part of this is by killing himself. Gives a really long monologue and then does just that. Dolores breaks. I also like the parallels between Dolores and Teddy, and of course William and his wife. William's wife kills himself. Seems like William goes off the deep end, right? What's going to happen to Dolores now that she just saw the love of her life? I mean, I guess William's wife wasn't really that, but who knows? But Dolores just saw Teddy kill himself. How is she now going to respond to that? How is she going to go off the rails? It's interesting, man. It was a good episode. A lot in it. I think that the finale is going to be fantastic. I have really high hopes for it. I'm hoping, this is my concern, it seems like it can be one big battle scene. Like everything's coming together in one big battle scene, and we know that Westworld doesn't do great with battle scenes, so I'm hoping it's not too heavy on that. I'm hoping it's heavy on the mystery and the reveals and things like that, because if it's one giant epic battle scene, I feel like it's going to be terrible. But I trust them. I think it'll be good. I think it'll be a good episode. And yeah, that'll do it for this. So I appreciate you guys listening to the Westworld Companion. Obviously, one episode to go. I'm sure we'll come back for season 3. This is a fun show to do. On the other side, Succession. If you want to hear me complain about Succession and talk about how much I love Greg, because that's pretty much the only reason I watch that show now, I'm still doing those midweek. They'll probably be shorter. I'm obviously less invested in the show, but I'll try to keep it fun. I'll keep it loose and hopefully it's still an enjoyable podcast, even if you're not into the show, or even if you are, hopefully you won't get too mad at me for dumping on it here and there. By the way, it could get better. I have low expectations at this point. But yeah, rate, review, subscribe to the podcast, and you'll get all these episodes in your stream. We also do spoiler reviews of a lot of movies and stuff. It's all very spelled out and titled, so you don't have to worry about accidentally spoiling something for yourself. But do that. If you're listening on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, leave comments. I've been getting a lot of really good comments and feedback and things like that. So hopefully that keeps going, because that's fun too, to have like a community aspect to this. But yeah, I appreciate all you guys listening. Hopefully you continue to do so. Tell a friend about this, and we will see you next week for the finale. Peace, guys.